So you have your patches didn't come with any heat seal backing included, or you want to sew them on. These are the patches that I make. The only thing for this particular manufacturer, they included this paper, or like super fine felt backing, which protects the stitching. So you can peel it off if you want. You can see some of the loose threads, but it's really why these ones make sense to use the gluing method the most. If they were patches that were simpler in shape, I think something like heat seal, you know, which you can cut and, you know, attach to the back of a patch, works a lot better for simple shapes. But because these ones have a lot of finicky long ends that are hard to keep down with just a tiny like little area of heat seal, it works best to glue this and then sew down the points just to make sure it attaches for as long as possible. So you have your patches, you're gonna need your glue, which I used Super Fabric, which is different than Fabric Fusion from the same brand. This one is actually really similar to like E6000, 5000. It's a cure time of like 2 to 6 hours, and comes with an applicator. Another option that I've used is Fabri-Tac, and which has a longer cure time, but also works really well. And you know they're washable, but anything that you're putting a patch on, you don't want to wash as often as you would wash like your underwear. So you've got your glue. You'll just need a thread. I have quilting thread or transparent thread if you need something really, really fine. It's almost like pubes with a needle, which is somewhere on this table I can't find, and then some scissors. And if you tend to be messy, acetone does help with cleaning up any glue edges that sneak out on the sides of your project. But with the glue stuff, you can do some awesome things. And we're going to show you how to do this one. All right. So really the best material for patches is something that is tightly woven, not knit. You don't want to put a patch on something like this. It really will never attach correctly unless you only sew it on. And something that doesn't have a ton of stretch. This has a little bit of stretch to it, which is better for using some of these flexible glues and the fabric adhesive. But it's essentially like a slightly stretched denim. It's relatively thin, but this is a good candidate. So let's cut this end off. Which is nice to have the small end, but that means you'll waste all of this in here when you end up capping it off. I'm sorry, can you hear the street sweepers? Very cool. So you really want to work it in. It's got a real smell to it, similar to E6000, but you want to make it relatively thin and not too thick of an application. You can see there's not much at all, but I'm just trying to make sure these will all blend together. But you want to put more importance on these ends here and not glop it on, because when you press it onto your garment, especially if it's dark fabric, all this glue is going to squeeze out the sides. And even though it does dry clear, it doesn't look good. And afterwards, if something is not adhered, you can always just get some detail work and glue this down. Move this aside. So you want to bring your garment over and you want it to be as flat as possible. So we're going to end up pressing this down and letting it sit for 6 hours before we check and see our work, which is annoying. So you can check and double check and see where the glue is and if you need anything else. I'm just gonna go make sure you know where you're going. You can always use a little bit of chalk to mark it if you lay it out first. And then just gently push it into the fabric. You can see in sunspots, it's come out a little bit. And you can use a Q-tip or a little bit of acetone to just clean up your edges. And I can already tell we're gonna need to glue these down. So it can help to take just like a different applicator, like that. Make sure these tips have glue on them as well. Press this as flat as possible. Again, like the more panels, the harder it is, but if you find something flat, you know. And then we'll check in on this in 6 hours. Okay, here we are a day later. All of our glue is dried and it's pretty good around the edges. I think in the future I wouldn't put something like this point this close to this fat seam on this denim. It would be better off on a totally flat piece, but this is where the sewing can come in. So like for, you know, this little piece here, we're gonna take your needle and thread, just regular standard quilting thread. Another one you can find is transparent thread, which is almost like, it's like a hair width, if you can even see that. Doesn't want to show it, which is much more invisible, but if you're on a black or dark piece of clothing, any width thread will work. So just take your knot, you know, you got your knot at the end. You're gonna start at the back. And for these tail pieces, I would just come up straight through. See if I can find our spot. But there you go. So this way, these guys won't come up, especially for, oh God, this fucking thing. Especially for something that has a lot of movement. Like I said, the closer it is to some stitches or like any sort of variation in the fabric thickness, are gonna be harder to adhere it. But with this and super fabric and just a few stitches, this will really, really stick on. And you want to put on clothes that you're not washing like daily, you know. You want to be like, I don't know, gentle with them. You don't want to be putting them in hot water. This is true for any patch. So, you know, for jackets, you can always get them dry clean or like gently hand wash them. But this way, this will stay for a long time. So there you go. Or, you know, an oldie but goodie, which is how to print. Show me what you end up doing with the patches. I'd love to see it, and you think anybody can use this just for sewing on patches on any of your stuff. Happy stitching.